Hello everybody, in today's video what I'm going to be doing is another watercolor landscape painting. So for this one I'm going to try and do a sunrise over a lake and try and have that nice reflecting yellows from the sun like bursting out reflected into the lake. That's what I'm going to try and do anyway. We'll see how it goes. So to start off with, what I'm doing is I've given the top sort of quarter to maybe just under halfway of the painting canvas that I'm using here, in this case watercolor paper, just a nice covering with water, and then I'm going to start with my colors here, as you can see, which is coming in with yellows, oranges, just a little touch of brown in there as well to establish the rising of the sun and that nice bright colors coming through to the sky here. So I'm going to be focusing this on the middle. You could easily come and do it from the side, you know, either left or right of it, to have it a little off center if you want to, but I want it sort of like nice and proudly in the center there. So coming in with those nice strong colors. And then once I've gotten those yellows and browns in and I'm sort of happy with that ratio there, I'm going to come in with our sky color, and this is like a bluish grey color because, like I said, I want to have this as sort of like a early morning, so I want to have that nicely in there. Now, one thing to be careful of, as you can imagine, if you're going to mix yellow and blue, is you're going to get some green in there. I'm not too worried about that. I want to try and avoid as much of it. I don't want to have it as a green sky, but having a little bit of mixture in there I don't think is going to be too bad, because, you know, I'm going for that sort of like early morning rise. We've got a lot of colors mixing in there, but the main thing I want is I want that nice bright color in the center, and on the outside of that I want to have it with the darkish blue gray that we've got there, so we can really see the intensity of all those colors piercing through there. And like I said, I'm just focusing it on the top portion of the video, video, what am I talking about, of the painting there, and I want to have it focused there. I want like that clear distinct line too, because also when that dries it's going to be like a nice separation point for where that horizon line is too, so a great little area to have me to work on by having that little bit dry on there. Then once I'm happy with the sky and our paint is still wet on the canvas, what I'm going to do is I've got this little lid that I have here just off a drinking bottle, and I've wrapped it around with a paper towel, and I'm just going to be dabbing the center of it. And what's that going to do is it's going to lift up the yellow pigment there and leave a white pigment. Now, it's not going to take off all of it because I'm only sort of lightly tapping it, but it's going to give us that silhouette of the sun in there. Now, this is totally up to you, like either how high or low you want it onto the piece there. If you want it like, you know, a very just cresting over the horizon line, you move it right further down. I want it sort of in the middle of our sky here to have it sort of framed, and then I'm just going to come in with our yellow colors and stuff like that and sort of just give it that little edging on there as well to have it nicely worked out, but not too much, so I can keep the colors lifted. I might even lift off just a little bit more color there as well. Then once you're happy with your placement of your sun, you can totally leave everything to dry now. So we've got that nice clear separation from where we're going to have our skyline to where we're going to have that nice reflection in the water here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work on that main big reflection that I want to have in the water. So I'm coming in with the exact same colors on my palette here that we just used, except for we're just transferring them, maybe even just having them a little bit lighter, because they are of course going to be reflected, so they're not going to be as potent. So if you want to mix them down or just thin them out with a little bit of water, and what I'm trying to do is try and recreate as sort of roughly as I can an approximation of what we did on our skyline there. Now this I'm still very new to, especially doing a reflection, so I'm not doing probably the greatest job here. You probably want to maybe try and follow it a little bit closer than what I'm doing here. But of course it is reflection, and we've got some, you know, nice rippling water there, so it's not too big a deal if you don't get it exact, as long as you get it close enough and the colors are within the same rough area, and you're looking at the painting. Your brain will basically sort of like make up the difference and sort of put two and two together and sort of blend the image to make it look a little bit better than what it is, so don't worry too much. That's one great thing with landscapes, because we're so focused on the entirety of the picture and how it all looks together, especially when you're looking at it from a distance to show off that it is a nice landscape. Your brain sort of fills in the areas a little bit more naturally, and lets you away with a few mistakes here and there, as long as you can sort of get that main idea across. Your brain sort of fills it in going, oh, that's the reflection of what is in the skyline here. And as you can see, of course, I'm coming on here with a lot more blues, running over a lot of those colors to try and get that nice mixing all in between there. As well as that too, I am also trying to go just sort of from left to right, right to left, just vertical along our surface here to try and give the effect off of like waves and ripples in the waves here. I'm not purposely trying to make any of them, but by keeping our brush strokes going from left to right as much as possible, when we have them come together and dry, it's sort of going to naturally leave like those tide pool areas and those strokes that we've gotten a little bit more pigment on than other areas in there, and it's going to sort of give off ripple effects. And now it's just up to you to how much you want to go with the reflection on there and make it more water-like, and how much more sort of ripples you want in the entirety of the piece. So this is totally like subjective and up to you how far you want to take this point here, and of course how much you want it to look like an exact copy from the skyline here. I don't want it to have it at exact, and like I said, I'm also new to this as well, so trying to figure out how to do it exact is probably a little bit beyond my skills as a beginner landscape painter, but it's going to look either way very nicely, because your brain's going to sort of put together what you're trying to accomplish as you're looking at it. So now where we have that nice sort of horizon line that we have in the center here, because we let those two areas dry separately, and it's created the area where all the paint sort of naturally rested and gave us this really awesome horizon line here, which I think would be great if you wanted to do it as a ocean, but I wanted to add a little bit more into that, because like I said, I wanted to make it a lake, because I want to have some foliage in the foreground there and that midground to practice my grasses and trees and that sort of thing. So I wanted to make it a lake, so I want to have it sort of separated off there. So what I'm going to do is come in with a grey, and I'm just going to color in basically that horizon line, trying to give me little like mountains and ridges. So I want to have that as sort of like the very edge of where the water is finishing off and it's leading towards the land. Then once you have that area of land in that background and your horizon line sort of all figured out where you want to, don't forget to use a little bit of a lighter color too, and just try and copy it on the area where we have our water as well, to try and put a little bit of reflection in that. All I did was come in with a lot more watered down pigmented color to use that as the reflection point in that water. But now what I'm doing is I'm going to be putting in a couple of areas that we're going to have some foliage in here, and what I want to do in our little lake here is I'm going to put one like little just like speck of land that's going to have a tree and some grasses and stuff growing on it, and then in the foreground I'm going to have an area where there's a whole bunch of reeds popping out of the water. So to indicate those, I'm coming in here with a color that is just slightly darker than the bluish grey we've been using for our water and our sky here, just adding a little bit more color to darken it down a bit. And like I said, I want to be having this as sort of like an early morning shot, so I'm going with those nice darker blues there to show off that our color's a little bit more saturated in those points of the area where we've got our ground, so it can look like, you know, our sky is like darkened down the like little rocks and grasses that are on there. But just a matter of picking out where you want to have those. I'm trying to make it a little bit more like, how would you say, like pleasing to the eye. So, and I want to have that nice focus point in the middle with our yellow color, so I'm just doing them just slightly off to the sides. And so once you're happy with the base area of your land, what I'm doing now is I've just come in with a watercolor brush here that's like a brush that you can fill up with water to have a constant supply of water when you're using any watercolors on it, so you can thin out areas like that. And this one here is like a nice flat tip on it, and I'm just using it like loaded up with water and just skimming along that bottom surface there, so you can sort of see where the water line is, and try and make that so you can clearly distinguish from where the reflection point and what area is like the foliage and the grass and the rocks, and then what part is the reflection in the water. So just trying to get that line as straight as possible, and try and like basically I'm using it as like an eraser for the color and the pigment on the page is sort of probably the easiest way to describe it. Then once we have that complete, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start working on that foliage I was talking about that I wanted to add. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to draw in a basically a dead tree onto this little spot of land that I have here in sort of the mid-ground, as I want to try and work on my branches and realistic looking trees, but I don't want to commit so much to the foliage in the piece, because I'm afraid if I put too much like greens and stuff like that, and it would sort of distract away from that sort of like early morning feel that I'm trying to give off for the whole piece. So what I'm doing is I'm just coming in with a desaturated brown here. I've just add a little bit of grey and black to it, just desaturating it down just that little bit, and I'm coming in and drawing my approximation of branches and a little dead tree that's on here that's been sitting on this island on the lake for quite a while. So it's just a matter of trying to make it look as natural as I possibly can, and that's, I guess, all up to practice. I don't know if I have it down right yet, but I'm trying my best to make it look as natural as I can, but also not having it as a complete focus on the entirety of the painting, I think, is also helping as well, by having it just a little bit off to the side so you can see it, and hopefully your brain will interpret it as that is a dead tree sitting on that island there, by not making the entirety focused, which is leaving it up to a lot of scrutiny. So we'll see how this goes anyway with my hands as I'm just going around and trying to paint in branches. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our final step of our painting here of our sunrise on a lake. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be painting in the grasses that we have here. Now, I'm going to be painting like those sort of reeds that you see grow out of the water and stuff like that. And it's not like a specific type of grass. I want to try to, make it look like it's a natural thing in there. And so to do that, I've made sure I've got my brush to quite a nice fine point. And I'm just coming in here with a desaturated green, and I'm just going in and using the very point of my brush, just carefully and lightly stroking it across the paper that I have here to try and give off realistic grass lines, hopefully. So one thing that I definitely have to learn myself is to not try and make them all uniformly straight as I was when I was starting there. I need to make sure I go across them crisscrossing, giving them different lengths. That's definitely something I need to learn to do quite a lot, as I'm not used to that. I'm used to traditional drawing, not so much landscape painting, so every line I try to make straight or parallel. I'm trying to keep everything nice and even, and not making everything look like natural as in a landscape painting where you're trying to recreate nature, and everything's not sort of nice and straight up and down in nature, especially in terms of like reeds and grasses in here. So I have to train myself to break out of that habit when I'm doing any sort of watercolor painting of landscapes. So just coming in and trying to come in with different various sizes, thicknesses, widths and angles will really help you out here. So probably do a bit better job than I did here of the grasses, because it wasn't until I had put down a few brush strokes that I'd realized, oh, I'm just making this looking completely uniform in here. So just one thing to be aware of if you're starting out landscape painting like I am here, is to vary up your line widths, weight and the height of each piece as you're going along, and just using one stroke at a time to do the entire piece of the grasses and reeds we're doing here. And then just one little detail I want to place on these bits of grasses and reeds that we have growing in our lake here is I'm just putting in that little piece on the end. I don't know what it's called, or even what these type of like reeds are called. They have these nice like little brown stump that sort of looks like a hot dog or you know, like a sausage on the end of the grasses here where it sort of shoots out for when it's pollinating and that sort of thing. So I wanted to try and recreate that on there too, to give it more of a authentic look, like this is you know, going through your memory and realize, oh yeah, that's right, these belong in the water. And just picking out just a few places. I don't want to have too many on here, just picking out a handful over the entirety of the piece to really sell out that these are like our water reeds on the piece. But with that complete, we have done our painting. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into some sort of glamour shots to show out how the piece came out in the end with it all completely nice and dried. And there you have it. There is our watercolor landscape painting of a sunrise upon a lake. I guess that's what I'm calling this piece now. So hopefully this has been enjoyable for you guys, whether you want to follow along and try and copy this painting like I've done here, or you want to use it as an inspiration in your own artwork. But with all that said, guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I can't wait to see you all in the next video.